Thanks for joining me as we begin our journey through the book of Numbers. So you can check out the last video that I had, a really short one, just kind of giving an overview of Numbers. But here we're going to dive right into chapter 1 with the census. So as we begin the book of Numbers here, they're still at Mount Sinai and they have this census. So this is counting the number of people. So these things can mean a lot of different things. In today's society, you'll have that for like taxation purposes. How many people are in this place? How much tax do we need to be getting from them? Or how many people are in this place so we know how big the representation should be in Congress, something like that. Here, you're going to see a number of these throughout the Bible, actually, particularly in Numbers. And Numbers has several of them, and that's maybe part of why we call it the book of Numbers. There's all these numbers in here. And in this first case, it's about war. Not in every case. We'll see some other cases later where it's about the service to the temple, or we'll see a place where it's about redemption. But here it's about war. And so that's why you have only the men, 20 years old and up, those are the ones that are counted. Because it's for how many warriors do we have? How many people do we have going into battle? Because they are going to have to go into battle. Because remember, way back in Genesis, we talked about this way back then. God said, he said to Abraham, over 400 years from now, I'm going to send my people to this promised land to take it over, but not right now. He says the iniquity has not been fulfilled. So basically they have much more sin they're going to commit, and I'm waiting until the fullness of that sin before I judge it. So in other words, they could have repented. Just like in the flood, he gives over 100 years for the people to repent, and they don't, and they're judged. And so here, these people that live there, they're not these innocent people that just unknowingly, they're just minding their own business, and Israel comes in and wipes them out. And we'll talk more about these people as we get to them in this book and in Deuteronomy as well, and in Joshua, and in Judges, and so on and so forth. But at the beginning here, what we're seeing is they're getting ready for war for these people, because this is how God's going to judge these people. He's judged them. He's judged people before en masse by the flood, by Sodom and Gomorrah, by fire and brimstone. There's other ways God has judged them. In this case, he's going to judge them through his people. He's the one determining this. They're not allowed to just do this arbitrarily. And so that's what's going on here. He's counting all the people that are men 20 years and older, not from the Levites, though. Very important to notice. And in fact, anytime we see essentially a list of the 12 tribes, it's really good to always pay attention to who is it that's listed as one of the 12 tribes and in what order. Because the order changes sometimes. So sometimes that may tell us something. That may be good information to notice. But also, there's essentially 13, in a way, tribes. Because you have the 12 tribes, and then you have one tribe, Joseph, is sometimes split into two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh. Most of the time, Joseph isn't mentioned. Most of the time, his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are mentioned as two separate tribes. And so you end up with 13 tribes, but they pretty much always list 12. And so somebody gets left out. And in different cases, it's a different tribe that gets left out. So that's also something good to notice and then say, okay, well, why is that tribe left out? In this case, Levi is left out because there's something different for the tribe of Levi. And so we've got this diagram right here, this map, and it's a rough estimate, but basically here is how, as Numbers describes it, how the tribes are laid out. Now, these tribes are laid out around this orange in the middle here. This is the tabernacle. This is the central focus. This is essentially God's palace. It's a tent, but it's a fantastic tent that was made a specific way that he asked for. And we saw that back in Exodus. And so you can go back and look at those videos there. I'll link that in the description below. But these guys right here, around that's Levi. And everyone around that, this kind of outer square, outer circle, however you want to think of it, they are the rest of the tribes. These are the 12 tribes, and then you have the Levites there. We were just talking about looking at the list of the tribes. Well, so we see that Levi is different. That's the 13th tribe. There you have the 12 tribes, and then Levi's left out for a particular reason we'll get to in a minute. But even just looking at, okay, well, these other tribes, what if we break it down by who their mother was? Because they all had the same father, but they had different mothers. So the ones through Rachel, who Jacob loved Rachel. He got tricked into marrying Leah, and then they each had another woman that was like a servant. They each had a servant that they gave to him, all illegitimate, bad stuff. Talked about that in Genesis. But that's how all these tribes came to be. Well, these three right here, those two were from Joseph. These are Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then Benjamin was Joseph's full brother. So this side, they're put together that are from the one woman. And then Dan and Naphtali up here up top, those two are from another woman. And then you've got 6 more that are all from Leah. You got Levi, Shimon, Reuben, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. That's all them. They're from another one. And then you have Gad and Asher are from another one. And so you've got them kind of grouped in like Leah's all over here, Rachel's here, the 2 from one, and then the last 2. And so maybe that's a consideration there. Maybe that's part of why they're organized in this way. Maybe there's another way. If you have thought of any other way, why is it they be organized in that way? Comment below. There could be a number of reasons why, and that could also teach us something. So it's good to just, as we read through this, to really think about what's being said and why. Because it's very easy when you get into names and numbers and long lists of stuff. You just read right through it, and it seems repetitive. And it's good to slow down, think about what's going on here, and why is this in here, and why is it being said in this way. Now, this map here, the different blocks are supposed to be roughly kind of relatively the right size for the amount of people that it gives. It says different tribes have different amounts of people. So if you see a smaller block, that means that they got less people than the bigger block, right? Judah had a lot of people, but Benjamin had less. And so those are not exact by any means, but that's supposed to give you a rough idea. The bigger tribes, the smaller tribes, and they're generally, those 3 are on that side, these 3 on this side. That doesn't mean that, I'm not saying necessarily Judah was over in the corner here, and then Issachar, and then Zebulun. This is just, those 3 were over there, these 3 there, those 3 there, those 3 there, and then the Levites in the middle. So it's kind of a rough estimate all around as far as the map. I have a more detailed one, a little more detail as far as it's got numbers there, it's got a lot more of the names there, all on one thing. If you want that, then just email me. I'll have the email in the description below, and I can send you that. There's also plenty of other resources that have done things like that as well. But those are just to help you have a better visual and understanding of exactly what is going on here in these first several chapters of Numbers as they do a census of all of these people. Now, Levi, though. Why is Levi separate? Levi is where the priests come from. Not all Levites are priests, only Aaron's family. Aaron is one of the Levites, so the priests are all Levites, but there's many others that are not. So over here, guarding the entrance to the temple, guarding the entrance there is where Moses is, Aaron is, his sons are the priests. But then the other 3 areas are all the rest of the Levites. Now, notice they are guarding the tabernacle. But how are they guarding it? What does that mean they're guarding it? They do guard it kind of like you could think of Adam was supposed to guard the Garden of Eden in the first place where God's special presence was. He was supposed to guard that. He was told to. And the same wording is used here for the priests, and they're supposed to guard the tabernacle. But it's not just like the idea of guarding the tabernacle and this holy place from the Israelites. It's the other way around as well. Because what happens if the Israelites come in when they're not allowed to? What happens if someone who is unholy comes into the presence of the holy God? They're toast. If you're not doing things the right way, you're toast. And we saw this back in Leviticus chapters 8 through 10. I'll link that video below. That's referenced in chapter 3, Numbers chapter 3 here. It says, "These are the names of the sons of Aaron, Nadab, the firstborn, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the anointed priests, whom he ordained to serve as priests. But Nadab and Abihu died before Yahweh when they offered unauthorized fire before Yahweh in the wilderness of Sinai." So there, even the priests, they have to do things a certain way. And so then you have all these other Israelites who are not in the priesthood, who are not designated, set apart, holy for this use. And if they come into God's presence, if they try to enter this place, they're done for. Even though we can think of this as kind of guarding the tabernacle, it is very much also guarding God's people. It's actually in verse 38. If we flip over to chapter 3, verse 38, it says, "Those who were to camp before the tabernacle on the east, before the tent of meeting, toward the sunrise, were Moses and Aaron and his sons, guarding the sanctuary itself, to protect the people of Israel." It doesn't say to protect the things in the tabernacle. It says to protect the people of Israel. So their job is protecting God's people, which of course Jesus does as well. That's his, that's what he does. He protects his people. Now, difference being, a very big key difference is, what does that look like? Because see, they kept all of God's people from being able to be in that spot, in the tabernacle. Jesus, though, because of him, we still have to go, we got to go through Jesus, the high priest. We got to go through him in order to get to the presence of God. But guess what? He's able to let us through there. He's the one who doesn't have to keep us out and keep us apart, but he is able to let us in. And he calls himself the temple. He is the tabernacle. He's the one that dwells with us. And we can be in that space. And that's through him. Now, when we're thinking about how there's this, it's a two-part thing, right? They're guarding the tabernacle, but they're also guarding the people from being destroyed. I guess you could kind of think of it like you have a kid, and your kid's standing up on the chair. My kids do this all the time. I have little kids, and they want to stand up on the chair and dance around on the chair. And you know what I know? I know if they keep that up, they're going to fall out of that chair, and they're going to hurt themselves. So I will get upset that they're up there, and I will tell them they have to get down from there. They're not allowed to be there. But I'm not doing that just arbitrarily. No, I'm seeing what is good for them. And they don't understand it all the time. They don't get it. They don't remember, oh yeah, like yesterday I did this and I fell down and hurt myself pretty bad. And so when I am telling them this is not allowed, you cannot do this, it is for their own good. And so God is putting the Levites here for the own good of the rest of the people, to protect the rest of the people, that they don't come into this place where they're forbidden from, where they will be destroyed if they come in their unholiness to a holy God. So there's a couple other ways that we see Jesus through here, that this is pointing us to him and what he does and who he is. You see in chapter 3, it's talking about the Levites, and it's talking about them having a census. Everyone that's a male 1 month and older. All these people who will be, basically all these people that will be working in the tabernacle. So this is kind of a census to determine how many people are able to serve. And when we see that you got to be 30 years old to serve. 30 years old to do this ministry work. How old was Jesus when he began his ministry? 30 years old. So is that a coincidence? I think we see another parallel here between the priests and Jesus. But lastly, we have this redemption that happens. So you have everyone a month and older, it's a male, they counted, and then you have the firstborn of everybody else. Now, back in Exodus, we saw that there was this Passover, and I'll link that video below, but there's a Passover, and during that time, what the Passover was for is because you had these people in Egypt were all dying, the firstborn. All the firstborn were dead because they didn't follow what God said, whereas all the Israelites, their firstborn, were spared. They were redeemed because of the blood of the Lamb. And so here, God's saying, hey, so all those firstborn, because of this historical event that has already happened to them, the firstborn especially belong to Yahweh. And so here, though, we have a situation where, okay, well, they're specifically dedicated to him, but they can't all work in the tabernacle. And so what God says is they can't do the job that God demands, and so the Levites will take that place. So all the Levites, they are replacing the firstborn. So these firstborn that are dedicated to God, instead of being at the temple working there, or at this point in the tabernacle, later on will be the temple, the Levites now take their place. And the Levites, instead of just saying the firstborn of the Levites, they're saying, oh, all of the Levites. That's now all the male Levites will be working in some capacity here, along with the priests. All the rest of the Levites will be working with them. And that's a replacement. And just like how we can't do what God demands of us, but Jesus replaces. He's the redemption for us. Just final point to notice is the sacrificing, right? That you have these people, and we'll see this a few videos later as well, that are redeemed. They are not sacrificed. God doesn't say, I want you to kill your firstborn in dedication to me. Other nations around did that, especially you had nations that worshipped Molech, and it was this god of child sacrifice. Well, here God redeems them. Even when there's not quite enough Levites, there's 273 short. There's 22,273 firstborn, but there's only 22,000 Levites that are males 1 month or older. Well, guess what? So God says those last 273, they're redeemed through money, through a redemption price. And so it's 5 shekels for each of those. So God does not give an option of just killing your kid, of sacrificing your child, and dedicating your firstborn in that way. When it's human sacrifice, a human offering, the human is dedicated to God in a way that does not involve the death of that child. So there are ways of having a human offering in the Bible, but they do not ever, when God is commanding it, they don't say, go kill that kid. They say, all right, well, you're redeemed through the Levite, or you're redeemed through this price of some kind. And so that's a very stark difference between Israel and the surrounding nations, and it's something that we're going to need to know moving forward, too, when we see later on either people disobeying that or people following that in ways that maybe we didn't see. And we'll get to that in Judges. So that wraps up the first several chapters of the book of Numbers. And until next time, we have a test for adultery. We have the Nazirite vow, these sorts of things that are coming into play next time. Thank you for watching that video. I hope that it helped you learn a little bit more about the Bible today. And if you'd like to continue to learn more about the Bible, then we have plenty of other videos on the channel. And if this has been helpful for you, then you can always let me know by subscribing to the channel. And hopefully I'll be able to continue to help you learn even more about God's Word. Thanks.